there's not enough tents. And I told you to set up 10. And the guy's like, when we woke up this morning, three of them were slashed by a bear.
Today on the podcast, we have Danny Streadbeck. He's a VP Group Creative Director at Digitas North America. And we talked about everything from flying a drone in Cuba, which apparently is not that easy. And he got extra time to fly so they could get the shot for Royal Caribbean. He also wrote some of the facts under Snapple caps and some of the labels on vitamin water. And we talked about people and having reliable people on your team. That will make or break your creative process. So hope you like it. So welcome to the podcast, Danny. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so if you want to jump in a little bit, and I think one of the biggest stories that stuck with me when we first talked was the Royal Caribbean. When we went down that path, when you were down shooting for the Royal Caribbean, you had to get that drone shot.
Yeah, we actually, so we shot like 8, I want to say, documentaries for Royal Caribbean. I mean, kudos to them. They wanted to highlight the locations. So they weren't going to talk about the ships. They weren't going to talk about how big their pools were. They wanted to talk about the locations. And we pitched them this idea to do it all about through the eyes of a local, like learn about the place through someone who's from there. And we were down in Cuba, actually. This was like 2019. And so that brief period where they actually opened up that you could go and visit Cuba. So we were filming a prima ballerina and filming these like chefs down there and all these like cool things. But we wanted to get some drone footage that we were going to use throughout. And Cuba having the government that it has, and everything's super controlled, and drones are just not allowed. Like in the entire country, a drone is not allowed unless you get this special permission. And there's like one company that you can hire, and they're terrible, and their drone is terrible, but you get them. And because it's not very often, that it happens, the police aren't used to it. So anytime they see a drone, they swarm on it. So we're down at I think it was called the Malacon, which is like this area just down by the waterfront. It's right in the downtown area. We start shooting, we put the drone up, and within minutes, we get swarmed by like 10 cop cars. They hop out. And so I lived actually in Central America for a couple of years, so I know Spanish, but I wanted to give our team as much time as possible because they were telling us we had to take it down, and we had the paperwork, and the producer was trying to explain it to them. And then so I just walked over slowly and grabbed the paperwork and just started flipping it. And I just started to speak really poor, slow Spanish to just buy the pilot and buy our director. We were shooting with Clay Jeter. So he's looking over these like terrible pilots and he's trying to give them direction. But I'm just going as slow as possible with each piece of paper, like, aquí hay un signa. No, mire, espere, hermano. Just as slow as I could. And took like 5 minutes as I was just like trying to sleep really slow. And we just got the drone up, got the like 3-4 shots, got it down. And I'm really glad that I did the like just kill as much time because they wouldn't let us put it back up, even though we went to like the tourism board or whatever it was that gave us permission, had the stamp. It was just so rare that the cops were just still not going to allow it. So just being able to just delay 5 minutes, do it all for the shot. It was great. We actually had, that shoot, we went to like a bunch of different islands. The one before that, we were in Alaska. We went to Denali, and we got in one of those tiny little prop planes that flew up. We landed on this tiny little lake. They had already gone up because we were shooting this like out, back, like explorer. And they'd sent some tents up for us in the production company. We got up there. We walked up to the tents, and there was a couple missing. And so the guide like walked up and was like, what is going on here, guys? Like, there's not enough tents. And I told you to set up 10. And the guy's like, when we woke up this morning, 3 of them were slashed by a bear.
Oh, damn. So
So
sorry.
we just
Yo.
took them down and we thought it'd be better. Like, we didn't want to scare anyone. And I was like, I'm the one they're trying not to scare. And I'm hearing the entire conversation and just being like, all right, we're up on Mount Denali. We're like the very top. There's no roads. And we ended up getting stuck there for an extra day because the fog came in
Oh,
and we
shit.
just like kept shooting. It was, but
Did you
like,
have to
that's
sleep
the
in a
thing.
tent?
We slept in the tents that got slashed. I did not sleep well.
Oh my
They put a little
God.
fence around it that was like electrified.
Oh yeah.
And I asked the like guide and he was like,
Clearly
oh.
it didn't
He's like,
work.
it does nothing unless the bear touches it with their nose. So you got like a 1 in 10 chance that they're going to lead with their nose and touch it. Other than that, they'll just walk right through it. And
Was
we
this for
actually
the
did end up seeing
cruise?
bears. This is for the cruise as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So because they go up to Alaska, we filmed like 3 different people up there. It was great. We got to go to all these different places. I mean, production takes you to places you would never get to just go and have that. I don't know, the budget. I mean, I can't afford a little plane to fly me up and explore the outback of, Mount Denali. And it was so cool. And I think, honestly, the access to the country, all the different countries, and getting to meet the people and learn, I don't know. It's just something that you don't get to do and with this like checkbook that we don't have in our
Yeah.
regular everyday lives. It's such a privilege, and I mean, I loved it.
That is something that's really cool.
Yeah, it allows you to like see the world, you know?
Mm-hmm. And when you're interviewing people, you get to sit down and talk to them and just ask them questions, and it's not rude. They already signed the thing saying that they would do it.
Yeah, exactly. So you get to
And
meet
then-
people through the job.
Exactly. That's awesome.
Super cool. Yeah, I've found that with some productions too, is like you're in a space where you would never like just go on vacation. You're like, we're in this weird spot, which is super cool. Like,
Mhm.
and you're not going to go on vacation and stay in a bear/tent. Like that doesn't sound fun, but you did. You got to do it. That's probably not something you'd ever sign up for.
Exactly. You go to places, I mean, something that maybe you're not into. Like I would go to Alaska, but I wouldn't go and do that exact thing, or I wouldn't
Right.
go and spend the day with that exact chef and learning about their life. And you like, man, you really get to dive into things, and it's like it's such a privilege.
Yeah. And do you find on some of these productions, like you're wanting to do certain things and maybe the producer's like, well, we can only do so many things. You're like, let's do this crazy thing. And they're like, we don't either have the budget or the safety, or like it's not legal to do something crazy like that.
Yeah. So my background a little bit is how I'm a creative. I started as a copywriter, worked my way up that. Now I'm a creative director. And early on, because it's working in like advertising, you come up with these crazy ideas and then you take it to a producer and they're like, okay, that's like a 10-day shoot. You want like how many extras? So you find out real quick that some of your ideas may be really creative, but there's just no way of doing them unless you have a blank check.
Right.
So what I love about what I loved about like the process, I don't know, maybe it's the like ADHD in me of like wanting to know how things work, but I just ask producers a ton of questions. So yeah, there's a lot of those where you're like, hey, why can't we do this? Or what if we did this? And the producer's just like, no, we have a schedule. We have to stick to it. What you just asked for would be another $100,000. Or no, we can't put that person in the road. It's dangerous. Or so there's just all these things that like, you realize that yes, creativity is like boundless, but production isn't it? And you have to like have all these different things in mind as you go to produce and make things that actually, I think it makes it, I want to say better, but I love the challenge when you actually get put in a box is when I think there's true creativity. So yeah, lots of times you're on set and you're like, I have this idea, and they're like, can't do that. And you're like, okay, how can I fake this? I can't shoot out in the ocean. So how am I going to do this? Oh, I'll set the boat on the edge of the dock and we'll have someone literally rock it slowly. And then we'll just shoot from the dock with a soft background. So it looks like they're in the water. Okay, great. So then you go and do it and you have this shot and just like one shot that looks like someone's out sailing in the ocean, but really they're just on the dock. And there's two like people just like pushing the boat side to side, but you would never know unless someone told you that. But that's where creativity comes in.
Yeah, it's so creative doing stuff like that. Like you said, when you're put into a box and then you just have to think your way out of it. You got to think like, how can we make this work because we really want this shot? I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And sometimes you have time to prep, and other times you're like, you just have an idea. You're like, oh, this will help with the story or whatever it is. And you're like, I've got 20 minutes. How do I do it? And then you find out how creative you actually are.
Right.
Yeah, and like going back to the copywriting thing that you said, you started out in a copywriting career, and from what you had alluded to last time, you did some Snapple facts, which I think is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I've worked with so many different brands. My entire career has been like with big agencies. A lot of people, it's interesting to find out how they got into advertising. I think a lot of people were like a designer and then fell into being an art director or wanted to write story like novels. And I don't know. But for me, I was the little 12-year-old kid watching the Super Bowl and being like, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to be a writer. I want to write 30-second ads. And so, yeah, I went to college, like worked really hard. The writing actually was a little harder for me. Like it was easy to do like storytelling and all those things, but the mechanics of writing, I really had to push myself and like buy those books, all the like how to write and all these
Yeah.
things and learn it all. And but like I said, the storytelling and all of that character building came really easy to me. So yeah, I got all the way through my first job, sit down day one, and they're like, we don't really know what to do with you yet. There's no brief that's coming right now. We have Snapple. We have to turn in like 50 Snapple facts every month. Can you write Snapple facts? And I think they told me like they got to be this many characters, a couple parameters, but that was it. And then they walked away, and they were like, "Oh, and have them to me by like in 3 days." So for 3 days, I just sat there writing Snapple facts. Took them a couple hundred. They edited it down, gave me more parameters, did it again. So like for a couple of weeks, just wrote Snapple facts, and you know, then got new assignments and didn't think about it until like a year later. Go and pop open a Snapple, and it's like, oh, it's like
That's so
calling my
awesome.
mom.
Back in the
Yeah,
day, that was, I mean, I got a Snapple, but it
there.
does not have, it's the plastic one. They didn't have a glass one. But it's such an iconic thing, especially for like our age demographic.
Yeah,
But man, yeah, it's so cool that you were the one to like write some of those things on there. It's
yeah.
unbelievable.
It's really crazy. And I've done other ones. We talked about this, but like went on to write all the bottle copy for like vitamin water and all these different brands. Uh, it all these things that you grow up watching, and it's kind of crazy when you do it. It feels surreal, like that
Mm.
seeing, being like, I remember writing that. Or my first ad that I ever shot was for a McDonald's Happy Meal, and that was just like, yeah, like being a little kid watching a McDonald's ad about Hot Wheels, and then being able to like grow up and write something like that was just like, I'm doing it. To someone else, they probably think it's so lame, but to me, it was like, I'm living the dream. Like I've made it.
Yeah, I feel that too, though. Like you start following these paths that you like thought about when you were a kid. Like one of the newest ones for us was we got into the headquarters over at Lego, and we started
Yeah,
doing some work with them. And I was like, man, I remember just like building Legos, and now I'm able to like work alongside with the people that make the product. It's just like such a cool thing to have a full circle like that.
yeah.
And I think this
It's a
career allows you to.
Yeah, you're like 12-year-old me would be so proud.
So
Like
stoked. Yeah.
our jobs, there's a lot of work that just feels like work, but then there are moments where you stop and you're like, hell yeah, this is amazing. And I like try to remind the people I work with now of those kind of moments. Um, when a certain brand reaches out or you're doing something or you're on a shoot, you're like, this is like, like, yes, let's stay focused, and yes, we have to be like sharp today, but like take a moment and just take it in. Like, this is so cool because, there's a lot of dark days in between those,
Totally.
those fun ones. Like, work is still work, but you can have those moments where it literally is just like that pure joy of like, I'm doing it. Like, this is what I wanted. I remember being in college and just being like, I hope someone hires me. I hope, like, that's all you want. And then one day you wake up and that's all you got. Every day you're just
Yeah.
working and working. And then you have to take a step back and be like, you know what? This is cool. Like, I mean, I have brothers that are accountants. They love it, I guess. I don't know why, but like we get to do such a cool job, just being visual storytellers. Like it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is cool.
It was interesting to me too, bringing it back to the fast food stuff. How you McDonald's especially have to use real things because when you see, I'm sure a lot of the audience or a lot of people think, when they use maple syrup, they'll use like engine oil or motor oil,
Yeah.
stuff like that, just for the photo or the video, the commercial. But you were saying the fast food industry, it has to be dead on down to like the measurements of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day that there's like a bunch of TikTok videos or whatever Instagram reels floating around where it's like, oh, this is how they actually shoot a pizza ad, or this is how they, and it's like, sure, they did at one point use a lot of that stuff, like motor oil for maple syrup or whatever it is, but most of the companies have gotten sued for like a version of false advertising. You have to show what
That's
you can
crazy.
buy, so they just don't do that anymore. I've been on a handful of food shoots, and it's always real. Like it's pretty crazy. The like tricks they use to make it look more appealing, but like we were talking about McDonald's, like the burgers, everything, it's the real everything they use, but they just push the ingredients to the front. So it looks like there's more lettuce, the cheese is hanging off and all that. But then if you looked at the back, it's just like naked. You can't really see anything.
But what's funny is they were probably put into a box. You have to use this, and they were being creative and said, "Oh, well, let's do this."
Exactly.
So they figured
Yep.
it out.
It's all real. There's so many rules of what you can show in advertising. Like what you film has to be real. Oh, I was gonna say one of the shoots, they research said that if food is steaming looks more appealing, the warmth coming off of it. So they just have like those clothing like straighteners that you see on
Yeah.
production that
Yeah.
so they just use those. They just hit it. They just got like the burger, whatever. They just like fire it up with all this
Some
steam, and
steam.
then the director says cut, and then they pull them away, and then there's just steam coming off the burger. So there's all these like things you can do to make it look more appealing, but it's the food for the most part. It's all real and everything. Um, and then what you show on TV, like the McDonald's Happy Meal, you had to show like the healthiest version of it. So the kids aren't eating French fries; they're eating the apple slices. They're not having the soda; they're having the milk. It's not the chocolate milk; it's the regular milk. So there's all those things like that. You go into beer advertising. In beer advertising, you'll notice that people never take a drink. So they're
Mm.
always just holding it, they'll cheers it, they'll pour it, but you'll never see them actually like tip the bottle up and drink the beer because it's illegal to advertise people drinking on TV. So you just won't see it.
And I never knew that.
Yeah.
I've watched so many beer commercials, and I never realized that no one takes a sip. Either I'm just oblivious, or I don't know.
Well, you're not waiting for that moment, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not, but it's they're always just like this, and they'll do a little cheers, or they'll just like do a little nod, or like.
Yeah.
So it's subtle. That's the thing, is that's the box you're put in, and you're just finding creative ways out of that. You've seen probably, I don't know, a million beer commercials in your
Yeah.
entire life. There's so many. Every time you turn on ESPN or any kind of sports, every other commercial is a beer ad. They never take a drink.
I feel like
Yeah.
somebody should do an ad where the whole ad is everybody like almost drinking it.
And then
And
just
they're
like
all
cut,
just, yeah,
cut.
they're all just like, and they're looking at each other like,
Who's gonna do it?
we're going to do
Should
it.
I?
I don't know. Maybe that would hit well.
That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like some of the ads that we see nowadays is like more storytelling and more story driven, which is awesome. And I think you've definitely worked on a lot of that type of stuff. And would you say that more brands nowadays are looking for you to pitch something like that versus like, all right, you got to sell insurance. Here it is. Here's the insurance. We're going to do this like little creative thing. But are they looking for like a longevity thing? Like, here's the story we're going to play out over the next year inside of this ad.
Yeah. I think they're I think some of the best marketers are doing that because they realize, especially with this younger age, Gen Z, millennials kind of started it, and Gen Z, like they just don't believe in companies anymore.
Mm.
Like our parents believe, like, oh man, Coca-Cola is trying to do the right thing. They're just trying to make money. That was like the belief. And now we just know that a lot of companies do a lot of shady things.
Mm.
And we know that they'll donate to maybe people we don't politically believe in, or they'll go and buy up water from third world countries and turn it all into soda. So you start to not to just knock on Coca-Cola, but we start to understand, like, there is this gray area and companies can do bad things. But then you see other companies that do really good things, that they're built on with a purpose, and they're built on like a greater mission. So millennials, but mostly Gen Z, like they're not even gonna support a brand or even care about a brand until the brand shows what they care about and what they stand
Mm.
for, and that they're true to it. Like people are gonna look into it. So I think some of the best marketers understand that, and they are trying to tell more stories that align with their brand purpose. And um, I've seen that, and I love it. Like it's a huge step forward, but a lot of brands still don't care. Like they're
Yeah.
just like, nope, I need to sell. And a lot of it is the company, what the culture is. If someone has sales goals they have to hit, they've got to do it. I won't say who, but there were I worked with a couple brands where you wanted to tell those stories, or you wanted to do a commercial that was more interesting, or an entire campaign, and they just weren't into it. And then you realize, oh, it's actually my fault. I'm not saying it in a way that they care about, because at the end of the day, maybe the 3 or 4 brand managers that I'm talking to, their entire bonus is around how many products they'll sell.
True.
So
Yeah.
I need to pitch my ideas in a way of, here's how you're going to hit your goals and sell
Mm.
more, and this is how you're going to sell more products. So part of it is that storytelling, even before you get to storytell to the general public, it's that storytelling to your client, not lying, but literally coming up with ideas that will push more product,
Mm-hmm.
that will help them hit their goals, but at the same time will tell a higher story that will align with people's brand value, their values. And it makes it harder. Again, it's that box again and again. You just need to realize what the box is. Talking to your clients, talking to the audience, saying what they want, and then finally, it's like a Venn diagram of like, this is what this person needs, this is what this person wants, and then you finally get to like, okay, that's the idea. That's going to allow me to tell a story while helping this company, because it's important. Companies need to make money,
Yeah.
like they've hired a lot of people. So if you're able to do that, it goes a long way. As a young creative, it was just like, I'm going to come up with the most creative, fun thing ever. And that's great, but that's not always what sells. And it's not what's actually going to help that brand move forward. Because I mean, we see it all the time. A lot of funny advertisements, or just engaging advertisements actually don't sell. It's
Yeah.
a mix of what you're doing as a company, the products, the media. So a lot goes into it beyond just having a really great ad. Like so many times we're like, oh, did you see that one ad where there's the dog and it was talking, and I can't remember what it was for. Like that happens all the
Totally.
time.
Those are like those Super Bowl commercials.
Some of
they're
them,
so
yeah.
iconic and so funny. But then you had that one with the bouncing QR code, and it like broke their website because so many people were clicking on it. And it's Coinbase,
Yep.
and it's like it's almost that curiosity of people like, what is that? Like, let me go there and figure it out. But
Something
yeah,
different.
I mean, the Super Bowl used to have iconic commercials, but now I think they're kind of just all I don't know. They're not as funny as they used to be, but just like you said, funny doesn't always sell.
Funny doesn't always sell, but go ahead.
Remember that one with I think it was a pug and the puppy monkey baby from Mountain Dew? That thing was hilarious.
That was
Does
great.
Mountain Dew even have commercials anymore?
I don't even think it sold Mountain Dew, but like I will never forget that. It was like licking the guys in the face while they were drinking Mountain Dew. It was just so weird.
Yeah. And that was them. It was, let's see if I can recall. It was caffeine juice and something else like electrolytes all in
Yeah.
one. So it was three things in one, just like a puppy, monkey, baby.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that's how they were able to do it. They told like a product benefit while trying to make you laugh, and that's why we remember it. And it probably like it did okay. And I think they ran it for a while.
Yeah. I don't know how it did with sales, but it probably did okay. I mean, you remembered, or I remembered the ad and who it was for. I don't know that I was always like trying to go buy the product, but I
Right,
Yeah,
talk
right.
about
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's definitely. I think it is getting harder to do comedy when you only have 30 seconds. You
Right.
have to lean into stereotypes. You have to lean into something that like characters that are already known, or known tropes, and so that can get into some spicy territory.
You got to be
If you
careful
go back,
nowadays.
you got to be a little more careful. But I think it's honestly, it's always for the better. But yes, it's when you go back and look at like 90s beer ads, you'll see like you'll be like, oh, that was a racial stereotype that, so
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of that. There's also things like, the Budweiser frogs, just saying Budweiser, you know, that there's nothing wrong there. But there's definitely, I think it's harder. And I think part of it too, even if you're not leaning into any of that, what I call spicy territory, it's just harder. I feel like in the past, just from my almost 2 decades of experience, I feel like we're now, the brands are being like governed by this, it's not like one or two people that are just saying, yes, that's the thing, go make it. Now it's like, oh, this brand manager and this one, and oh, we got to talk to this person in the company. And I feel like our ideas are being shopped to more people than they were 15, 16, 17 years ago.
Why do you think that
uh,
is?
I think they, one, are trying to make cohesive brands because the brands are just getting so big, so they have so many different, lines of business.
Yeah.
And then I also do think they're afraid. Before, I don't remember, most big companies and agencies have like business affairs, and they also have um, some have like government affairs, some have public affairs, like all these different councils, or I'm not saying the right word, but they essentially will submit our scripts to those places, and they'll come back and say like, this is how risky this line is, or this is how risky this line is.
Mm.
And so a lot of jokes or other things, it just depends on the brand. Some, unless it's like a red flag, they're like, that's fine. Like, and I appreciate it. Other ones are anything that gets marked, even if it's like very minor, like, oh, this could be taken the wrong way. Some brands just aren't brave, and they don't want to take on any risk. And so they're just like, nope, change it.
Do
And
you
so,
try to explain that to them, or do you just say, okay, I'll come up with something else, or
yeah, it depends on the brand. Cause some we just know like they're risk averted, like they're going to do everything they can to not, it's kind of funny. Like they want to get attention, but not too much attention. And the idea of creating something that gets negative attention is really scary, because usually you hear down the road CMO gets fired, VP gets fired, and the person that approved it gets fired. So to them, they're like, not worth it. That one joke, although very funny, not worth it to them at
Yeah.
all. Like they're I'm focusing on advertising, which is very much the like, it's very singular with what marketing is. Marketing is so much of what are the 4 P's of price, promotion, placement, and product. So they're focused on the other 3 P's as well. So they have, their job is wider. And so when they look at this one joke or this one commercial, they're just like, no, like, because they have 50 other things that they're worrying about. But for me, it's my world. I've been writing this script for weeks and nuancing it, and building these characters. So when they kill this one thing, it's a huge deal to me, but to them, it's just, they're just going down a list.
Yeah, they feel like they have so much more to lose, probably. They're like, oh, I lose my job. And like
Exactly.
the reward for them is like, we do a cool ad, even if it sells more product, they're like, they probably don't get anything really out of that. Like people are just like,
Exactly.
oh,
So,
nice work.
and I think it might be splitting hairs, but other ones, like, I feel like there's other people that want the glory. They're like, yes, I
Yeah.
want headlines. And it might be that their boss as well, like, is like they know that they can fail. And it also comes down to the product too. Like if you're working in healthcare, financial services, or anything along those lines where the government's highly regulating it and you're dealing with people's health or safety or, financial well-being, then they're less, willing to do it. But then you're with Mountain Dew, you're like, what's the worst thing? It's like you offend someone and they don't buy a can that's only going to make you 50 cents. So
Yeah.
it depends on the product. But I am hopeful. I think brands can still be funny. I mean, you still look at a lot of the things like that Geico's doing. They still have hilarious ads. Um, Insurance category. I even still think the beer and all those other categories still have them. They're just not as slapsticky. Um, but it does. The pendulum swings. I think it was super slapsticky, and it kind of went. I think with the ad of there's the M&M Detroit ad, the Chrysler ad. It was like it's a while back. It was in 2000. I want to say like 11, when the American automotive industry was kind of crashing, and Ford and everyone was going through it. And then the Eminem voice, it wasn't his voiceover, he was just in the end of it, but it was all about like it was built that the cars were built in Detroit. Detroit was like actually not a bad thing. Imported, that's what it was. Imported from Detroit. So it wasn't a bad thing. Like you didn't need to be imported from Germany or all these different places. The car was imported from Detroit, and there was a lot of pride there. Like this fire, it's a great ad, but that was very serious, and people saw that for the first time, and it was like, oh wow. And it won a bunch of awards, got tons of attention. And I think the pendulum swung to like, oh, we can do these big, bold manifestos that are inspiring. And I think everyone's been trying to do a version of that. Nike's done a few. They just did like the crazy ones, and they did a few others that are still like, you know, they're all really inspiring. Um, so I
It's
think,
funny.
yeah, people,
Sorry.
the pendulum's there, and I think it's gonna swing back because I think people are like, we're getting too serious.
Yeah, it's funny because they almost stole that from 8 Mile, bringing Eminem there. The cars in Detroit. He was the automotive worker putting doors together. It's like they kind of took a thing and just turned it into a commercial. I mean,
Just
I
rode with
can't
it.
remember it, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. But anyways, that's getting too into the weeds of the advertising culture. But I think there was definitely the pendulum swings about how silly and slapstick and all that kind of. I think we'll see more and more of that, especially as the world gets more hectic and the world
Yeah.
burns
It's
a little
coming
more.
back.
I think
Yeah.
people will want some things that are just light. But again, I think it comes back to that this new generation of consumers wants a brand that stands for something. So I think it's fine. Like you're fine if Doritos does a slapstick ad. You're fine if Taco Bell does. But when you're buying something more substantial, you're like, I want it to be a little more serious. I want it to stand for something. But I think it's okay if it stands for levity too. Like I think we'll see that pendulum swing, and we'll see more of the ads like that.
Yeah. And what do you think if you were to go back through your whole career, what do you think is the moment that you felt most proud, I guess, or like you were like, wow, this is incredible. Like is there a project that stands out where you're like, we did this thing that took like so long, or like I didn't think we were going to be able to make this thing.
Yeah.
Was there one that sticks out?
Um. Hmm. Well, I think we were just talking about that. I think there are projects where creatively I'm like, oh, that was such a funny joke, or that early on in my career, I worked at an agency called Leo Burnett, and some great creatives came up with the campaign for Mayhem, and he was such a fun character to write for, and I was able to write some commercials for him and some radio ads, and some of them won awards. And it was really fulfilling during that time because they ran so much that you'd be out to dinner with friends and they'd be like, what are you up to lately? And I literally could point to the TVs over the bar and be like, I wrote that. We shot
That's
it
so
a couple months
awesome.
ago.
So cool.
So those like that we were talking about earlier, like 12-year-old Danny would have been like, yeah,
Yeah.
you did it. So those are really, I think, rewarding. But I also think this every now and then I feel like these brands put their money behind things that are like really good causes. I think even though Royal Caribbean, what they're trying to do is show you the beauty of these islands or Alaska or wherever they're sailing, but the fact that they were able to do it in not a showy way of like, show us the ship and yeah, like they were like, go and let's see the places, but through the lens of these locals, that was amazing and very, very rewarding to go and shoot those like short films with just this last couple months. We did a whole campaign for Bank of America. They're now the sponsor of the Boston Marathon. And as we were showing them a bunch of different ideas, as the sponsor, you're also the sponsor of the charitable program that goes along with the race. And so they were like, we want to focus on that aspect, on the charitable aspect, the fact that 10% of all the runners run for charity. And they raise between five to 15, $20,000, which is incredibly hard. Like training for a marathon is like a full-time job, but then on top of that, to be raising $15,000 is just, it's crazy. These people are, honestly, like I got to meet a lot of these people, and they made me feel really bad about who I am because I do not want to do all that stuff. I do not want to get out and run and spend my weekends like, fundraising. They were such awesome people. But anyways, the whole campaign was centered around them. So instead of doing a TV spot about the elite runner who's running for the world record time, we did one about uh, a gentleman named Cedric who lost. He became a double amputee and the fighting in Afghanistan. I believe that's where he lost him, and now he's running for Achilles International to help get more amputees and more people back on the starting line. And a woman who had a difficult she was out in Alaska like trail running and went into labor and was
Wow.
flighted out and was able to have like her baby because there were organizations that put her in a home close to the airport because she couldn't go back to her small Alaskan like town because there wasn't a hospital there, and if she went into labor again, like she might be stuck. So she wanted to give back. And this guy named Peter who has run like 80 marathons pushing like kids in wheelchairs that could otherwise not run a marathon. So we did all these different stories, and we made ads like commercials. We made like billboards and took over like subway stations in Boston. Anyways, sorry, long story short, the year prior, the Boston Marathon raised $41 million for charity.
Wow.
And then this year we raised 72 million.
Wow.
So
Damn.
it makes you feel like, sometimes you get to make cool things where you're like, this was really cool. And I wrote that joke and, oh, see, I made that. And there's other times where it's like, I helped charity get an extra 20, $30 million.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It
Yeah.
helps. It helps because, sometimes a lot of our job is just helping brands make money or tell a story. But sometimes you can tell individuals' story and give them that moment to shine. And so, like huge props to Bank of America for doing that and putting all that money behind it. And but it was like, yeah, after you produce a campaign like that and get to meet all those people, you're like, okay, I feel a little bit better about my job and what I
Yeah.
do. And it was a grind. We told a lot of stories and went and photographed 29 different runners, but at the end of the day, like it was very, very rewarding.
You made a bigger impact too with the work that you do, which does feel good to be able to like give back from a creative standpoint too.
Totally.
And how do you find some of those stories? Like that's pretty incredible. The lady who's trail running and then has a baby. Like, do you
Yeah.
help find that stuff or?
Yeah, it depends on the brand or what the assignment is and how many you need to find. With something like that project, Bank of America and some people on our side were reaching out to all the individual charities. So each marathon has like a group of charities that can benefit from the race. I think the Boston Marathon's like 168 charities, And so we reached out to those charities and asked them if they had stories. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of stories in, and some of them are fantastic, and some of them are so. It's kind of hard because you want to tell all the stories, but you guys know, like you read a story, and you're like, that's great, but it's not great visually. It's
Yeah.
not a story, it's like, oh, it's about an email chain and they wrote a bunch of emails to their senator and then they got this, like you're like, that's such an amazing story. However, I can't do a 5 minute like docu on that.
Yeah, it
It's
wouldn't
not
translate as
like,
well.
yeah, I mean, you can, but it wouldn't translate as well. So you have to a little bit put on that hat of like, okay, that's a great story. I can do a print ad about that. That's a great story. I can put that person on a billboard because I can tell their story in 4 or 5 words. Oh, this person, I can do a 30 second. So it was cool to see how many stories are poured in and to be able to just read all those. I mean, it was hard to read through like literally hundreds and hundreds of stories. And I felt bad not being able to do them all, but that's how you do it. So if you reach out to an organization, they're dying to tell stories. They don't have a budget. They have so many amazing people that come in and volunteer at their programs. So yeah, anyone out there, if you're looking for a good story, just call up a nonprofit. There's usually like a head of PR, or it's usually a small department. It's usually one person who does the advertising, PR, all of that. They'll have dozens of stories that they're excited to help you tell.
Yeah. And you've worked on everything from large campaigns with Bank of America to smaller jobs. I think some things that people often look at is like the bigger the budget, the like better the product and the more stuff we can do. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, you've seen all sizes. Would you say like when you have the big budget, that's like the best work?
Yeah, no, it's not. I think the bigger budget, there's a lot of comfort there. There's a safety net of like, oh, I can hire this person who's a great DP, then I can hire this person, and you're able to hire a lot of um, really talented people to do it. But at the end of the day, it's all about the idea. Like, is the story right? Is the idea right? And you can go and shoot low budge if the story is compelling.
Hmm.
I mean, we've all seen documentaries on Netflix that are like highly produced, polished, beautiful, and you're just like, ah, it was okay. But then you'll watch one that's like super janky, and the camera, it's all shot like on an iPhone, but the story, you're just at the edge of your seat the whole time. You're like, how did this happen? No way! Like, it all comes down to like whatever it is. If it's the creative idea, the hook, the story you're telling, that's really what like is going to determine how great the work is. The big budget's just nice because you can kind of sit back. You don't have to do as much. Not saying you're not working as hard, but like if you are a producer on it, then you can have another producer. There's a line producer. There's someone's taking care of the food. When you're doing a small thing, like you might be craft services and the director, and you're running around getting people to sign waivers, and like, so there's just might be, but sometimes that's more rewarding because at the end of the day, you're like, I did this, I did that, I got everyone food, then I went and interviewed that person. So I actually really enjoy a mix of all. Like, it's nice to show up on set where everything's taken care of and you can just focus on the idea or the dialogue or whatever it is. And it's also sometimes nice to just like have a backpack and you're running around with your iPhone interviewing people, and it's not going to be as nice, but it's yours.
Yeah. Is there a job besides all of the budgets and the big budgets and the production work you've done? Is there a job that, like, either when you were growing up or before you got into this stuff, that you learned a lot of like big lessons in that's not production related?
Um, I had a lot of weird jobs. I worked at a surf shop selling clothing. I was a janitor for like 4 years. So just at an office, like workspace, cleaning toilets. And I think my biggest takeaway from all these little jobs that I had was just um, do it well, um, and uh, be someone that everyone can rely on.
Mm.
You actually, when you go out into like the real world or whatever, you go into corporate America or you go into any job, you actually find out pretty quick that like a lot of people don't care. A lot of people are not going to go the extra mile. Um, Being able to just do your job, deliver on time is huge because most people don't.
Yeah.
There's an excuse, something comes up, like life happens, but there's like I'm still surprised to this day how many times I work with adults where I'm like, "Oh, you said you were going to do this thing at this time. It's 4 days later. You haven't done it. Like,
It's
I'm
crazy.
following up. Have you done it?" And, like I need reminders. Like I've mentioned with ADHD, I forget things constantly. I
Totally.
might have done it and it's just sitting, waiting to send it. And I just like, oh, I was going to say, but so, I mean, I'm not trying to say there's anything about perfection or whatever, but just being someone that people can count on
Right.
is like goes a long way. That whole like, oh, arrive early, like leave late and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, but like if you hire me and I'm the sound tech and it's like I'm always there when you call me and I'm always like show up on time, I do the job, I deliver the files. Like you're just doing your job. You don't even have to go above and beyond. You're just doing your job when you're supposed to. And people will love you and always call you back and want you to work on things because they can just rely on you. They want to hire someone, especially when you're managing like a crew or multiple creatives or whatever. I love being able to like hand someone work and then turn and focus on other problems and just know that there's someone I can rely on. They're the person who's going to get promoted or continue to get work. Like I always tell like my younger creatives, like the best thing you can do is make your boss's job easier because then
Right.
they're going to take care of you, promote you, get you. Because if you're someone that can be relied on, you're just going to do well in any industry, no matter what it is.
Yeah. And why do you think that is nowadays? That it seems I've seen it too, where it's like it's gotten worse. It's almost like
It
it's
has.
hard to find more reliable people. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why that is. I don't know if it's because we're more distracted or there's just like nobody cares anymore. I'm not really sure what to do about it.
I think
Like, hello.
yeah, I do think that every like generation complains about the younger generation, and what I do love about the younger generation is that they see through a lot of the bullshit, and that
Mm,
they don't buy into consumerism as much, and they don't. But with that, because everything is feels fleeting, and like for them, they grew up and the world's already burning. There's kind of like so I see with like that the younger Gen Z age, they're but they're honest about it. That's what I love because whenever I get a new young creative, I'm just like, what do you want out of this career? Do you want to win awards? Do you want to be the best writer? Do you want this? And I have no problem when they're like, I want to work really hard from 9 to 5, but I never want to work on the weekends. I don't care to be pushed. I respect that. Like if that's what it is, then I will like get what I need out of you. And then if someone's like, hey, I'm all in, like teach me, like what books can I read? Like that going the extra mile, like I think that person will get promoted more and who's just going to put in more. But I appreciate that there's an honesty before that wasn't, I think everyone just our our dads went to work and suffered and came home, but I think so. I don't know. And I also think COVID broke a lot of things. I think
totally.
we were just bought into the system and working and working. And I think it was unhealthy. We weren't taking care of ourselves. We didn't have the boundaries. If someone called and was like, can you do this thing over the weekend? We would just say yes. When now you're like, you know what? I should go to my kid's game. Like, I
Yeah.
can't. I'm sorry. So I feel that with myself, I'm a little more honest. It could be that I'm reached a certain level in my career where I don't feel like I have to prove myself, where I'm allowed to say no. But I think it's a mix of that. I think people see work for what it is. They, I think some people just don't enjoy it as much. I think,
The
I
other
mean,
thing,
yeah,
the other thing too with the employers, they can't afford to lose these people. So if you say, "Hey, I'm going to my kid's game this weekend, I can't come in," they're like, "Damn, well, I can't be mad at him because I need him to show up on Monday. I can't find anybody." So
exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
There's so many people just know that they also have some comfort there. And when you do have someone good, you can get away with more. But I don't know. But that's my biggest advice for anyone listening to this, regardless of where you're at, to just be reliable, um, it, in any form, showing up, sending the thing when you're supposed to. I have a million sticky notes everywhere. If I didn't, I wouldn't get anything done. But figuring out what your process is and just being reliable goes a long way. Like, yes, if you're better, then you'll go far. And if you're pushing boundaries and yada, 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 that's great. But if you're just reliable, you'll have a great career. Like, and that's not hard. Like, effort is not a talent. Like, talent, I think a lot of talent really is like inherently, I think, like I could work harder than LeBron James, but I'm never going to beat that guy in a game. LeBron James and I graduated high school the same year. I actually my high school played him in a game in LA.
How crazy.
Wait, did you play him?
I did not play him.
It's like, maybe we got to get a one-on-one going here.
No,
LeBron, if you're listening, we're going to get you out here.
No, but that's the thing is you see certain people, or I've been in rooms with other creatives or writers where you're just like, damn, you're so talented. And if I worked as hard as I could, like, I don't know if I could catch up, but I'm going to be super reliable, or I'm going to be a pleasure to work with. I'm not just going to be a yes man or be super soft on everyone, but I'm at least going to take care of the people who work for me and make sure that they know that they're cared for beyond the fact that I just need things from them. Like, I want to make sure I remember their spouse's name and their kids' birthdays and care about them, because those kind of things go a long way. So if you can find the kind of, talent is one thing. Yes, it's great. But if you can be a good person, if you can be kind to people around you, if you can show up on time, if you do those other kind of things, those are, I think, just as important. It's staying in basketball. You can't have a team full of LeBrons. You see that when they bring a team and they stack them with a bunch of all-stars, they don't always do well, because you need the people who are just going to, play great defense and pass the ball. If you have everyone in there who just wants to be the superstar and is not going to do those things, your team kind of falls apart. So if you can be a role player, like, you can go far in any industry.
Yeah, I think that's true for just like you're saying, being reliable and networking. I think a lot in this industry, if you're like a real person and just like really want to connect with people and find out more about who they are and their families and just understand them as a person, it actually does help you, I think, go further, because it shows you care. And like, that's hard to find.
Yeah. And when you, let's say you're hiring people, you're around clients and you're around other people, and it's like, oh, who am I going to hire? The person who is kind of like a diva and yelled at people, or it's like, oh, that one guy was super nice and chatty, and every time I see him, he's a pleasure to be around. So when I go to this on this project, I want to have that person, because, not only is it going to be better for the crew, but I have to all the time send creatives and other people to work with clients and stuff when I'm not there. And there are certain ones that I don't send because they, I don't trust they're not going to talk about certain things. And they, creatives can be really, testy at times. Like they're these passionate artists, and sometimes if something's not right or an idea gets shot down, they can lose it. Fortunately, I don't have anyone like that on my team right now, but I've had in the past where it's just like, okay, you're a really great creative, but I'm going to keep you in your space.
Yeah.
You tell me the idea, and then I will talk to the client about it. And, because when the client kills it, I'm not going to scream at them and tell them they're an idiot.
Yeah, you're going to be the buffer.
Exactly. So that's the thing, is it goes back to, I can't rely on that person. Like, I can rely on them for great ideas, but I can't rely on them to have a civil conversation with someone who's going to critique their ideas live. So just being reliable goes, so far.
I wanted to ask you earlier on, but what did you think about the Bud Light ads and commercials? I mean, they almost lost their entire company by, I'm neither here nor there on, whatever, but them going with that demographic almost lost their company. I just find it crazy that one ad can almost destroy what you've built. And Bud Light is Budweiser, Bud Light, it's They've been around forever,
Yeah.
and they almost lost everything.
Yeah. Their big problem was it's okay if you go and draw a line in the sand and say, you know, I support this cause, and half the country might hate you for it, and that's fine. It's a big country. Of the people who are going to hate you for it, they're not really going to hate. It's just a moment, you know. But you have to stand behind the cause. If Bud Light would have just said, "We believe in a free America. All people deserve respect,"
Hmm.
and just
I think they
stopped,
would have. You're absolutely right.
they
Yeah.
would have had the love of the
Yep.
LGBTQ plus community. They would have had the love of, you know, the Democratic leaning people. And you know what? 90% of that other side would have probably been fine with it too. There's a 10% that's going to yell and be mad, and they may never buy it again. But you know, you need to pick a side and stand by it. And you don't have to do it in a way where you're just like, if you don't believe this, you're an idiot. It's just like, this is what we believe. We believe all people deserve respect. If they just would have said that, that press release, people just would have been like, okay, you know.
I think you are so right on that.
Yeah.
If they had just said that, because what they did now is they kind of just deaded that, and then now they're sponsoring the UFC, and they're trying to get their old
Swing back to, like, they're just going
they
both
really
sides.
are, and it's yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Sam Adams is, I think, like a top 3 or top 5 biggest beer in the US. I think, yeah, Bud Light or whoever it was fell off the list completely. They're not a top 10 domestic beer. Sam Adams has a big LGBTQ plus like platform. They do a lot. I can't remember what it's called, but I worked with them briefly on something, you know, years ago. But most brands have something that's very welcoming to all people. And so it's not that, it's that they were so wishy-washy about it. And, you know, it's just, it's unfortunate. So I think it's just a lesson for all brands and for everyone. It's like, if people get mad at you for using someone, or, you know, siding with, I don't know, like, it wasn't even a stance. It was just they hired an influencer. Like, that's all it was. And the best thing you can do is just say, like, and unless that person's like a pedophile or something, that you need to come out hard and be like, we're against this.
Right.
We can, you know, condemn
That's like
this.
Subway.
Subway.
Jared.
Oh God.
You need to condemn that, and then you move on. But if it's just someone who's like politically or whatever, you know, you just say, like, we love all people.
Yeah.
And you just leave it at that. It'll bubble for another week or two and it'll die out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's the whole thing with advertising, though, is you like find a spot, you go with it, and then you don't
Stand
have
by it.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
you have to have a reason. And if you don't, everything just crumbles.
Exactly. But to what we were talking about earlier, why is advertising getting a little like maybe softer and the jokes aren't as hard and all those things? It's that people see something like that and they're like, oh, I don't know. You mean, it's sad to see, but I just think I don't want to operate from a place of fear and worried about getting canceled or those kind of things or whatever. I think it is important to treat everyone with respect, and it's important to not punch down. So, you know, like, let's try to have ads that, you know, inspire and don't belittle. But, you know, if you ever do something that was wrong, just admit it, move on. And if you did something that offended people, but you didn't do it, nothing you did was wrong, you just supported someone that maybe they don't love, just say, we love everyone. Sorry.
Yeah.
You got to stand behind it. And I think that's a lot of companies. That's when more heat comes at you, is when you're kind of flipping, flopping, you know, you don't really know, oh, well, we just did this, or we didn't mean to do that, or whatever. It's like, no, if you do something, you stand behind it. And eventually, you know, people are going to get over it.
Yeah.
You know, it'll take a week and people aren't even thinking about it anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The news cycle, something bad's going to happen, or, you know, something great's going to happen in a week. So just ride it out. And I think for company owners, I think you just need to, like, if someone wasn't being malicious or something, it's like, you need to stand by your people too. I think you can't breed a culture of fear. I think the Bud Light people did get let go, which I think was the right move because of the wishy-washy, but but I know other ones who haven't, that they made a mistake, which the Bud Light was not a mistake, but they made a mistake and brand stood by them. And I think I think it goes a long way.
Yeah. And now anybody out there, like you said, when you were 12, you saw the Super Bowl ads and you're like, this is what I want to do. Anybody out there that is trying to be a creative director or do the copywriting work that you did, like what's the path? Like, is there a path, or like, where should they start, or how should they find their way to that path?
It's really niche. You can go and study advertising at a lot of schools, but it's not really like an advertising program. It'll just be like communications, and then you'll have like one advertising class. There are a few schools that just focus on advertising, and you kind of have to go to them. Or there's like graduate but not graduate programs. There, you don't need a degree to go to them. There are they're literally called portfolio schools, because all you do is go and work on your advertising portfolio. You're just there making mock ads, and you have teachers who are like industry, creative directors who teach it at night, or there are some faculty that are full-time, but a lot of them are like night and weekend kind of advertising creative directors. So if you want to get into advertising, usually, you need an undergraduate in whatever. Communication's great. It doesn't really matter. If you're a designer, you get in design. But then you can go to a portfolio school if your college didn't have a program. Like I said, University of Texas, Oregon, BYU, SCAD, those all have like solid advertising programs, but most aren't anywhere close. So you'd have to go to something called the Creative Circus, which I don't know if that went out of business. Miami Ad School are some of these like portfolio schools where you go for a year to 2 years, and they actually hook you up with internships too. So it might be 2 years, but it's not 2 years of classwork. Maybe it's like a year and a half, and then there's like 2 internships in between where you get to go. So it's hard to break into the advertising world. But once you're in, it's a small community. There are a ton of agencies, but everyone seems to know everyone. Like I said early on, I started at Leo Burnett, which is owned by the Publicis holding company. And now I work for Digitas, which is also in the Publicis company. And we're connected with Leo Burnett on over doing all the work for Bank of America. So I'm like with a lot of my old coworkers again.
That's cool.
And so don't once you're in it, don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
You get fired, you say, thank you for the opportunity. Be really nice.
That's like that in any of the creative fields. I've seen some of that on my end too. Like, you don't want to burn bridges because it affects everything somehow. Like somebody knew somebody even across the world that now you're working with, and it's crazy. All connected.
This actually just happened with me at the restaurant. One of our old employees, she got let go a couple years ago, but then we got a call from a new employer that wants to hire her, and they called us looking for a referral. They're like, "Oh, she had you on a list," and we were like,
"She did."
She burned her bridge, and we were like, "If she shouldn't have left this way because
she should have taken you off the list."
Affected her down the road. Yeah, we were surprised she put us on, but yeah, it was funny. I think they were just doing a background check on her, but yeah, you never want to burn bridges.
No, it affects everything.
There's right ways to give feedback, and there's HR and other things like that. But yeah, there were a lot of times where you just wanted to be like, everyone here sucks. I hate you.
Yeah.
You can't. And you know what? We all have our times, and I'm sure someone's felt that way about me on their way out too. But I think it's just treating people with dignity and hoping you get the same in return.
It's true. Well, we appreciate you coming on today. This has been awesome. Thank you for spending the time. Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Yep. That's the pod.